There are some people in this world who have never ever heard the word no. Aisha was one of them. In a big, beautiful house in the city of Abuja, where the sound of four older brothers was always loud enough to shake the walls, lived a small girl who held all the power. That girl was Aisha. She was the last born, the baby and the only daughter of her parents. Her brothers, Musa, the serious one, Kabir, the athlete, Farouk, the smart one, and Sani, the quiet giant, were like her personal bodyguards, servants, and punching bags, all rolled into one. If Aisha pointed at the last slide of mango, it was hers. If she wanted to watch cartoon when Musa was watching the news, the TV suddenly switched. When she was 7 years old, she perfected the fake cry. It was a loud, dramatic wail that could stop her mother in her track from 2 rooms away. One afternoon, Musa refused to share his newly bought comic book. Aisha tried to snatch it. He pulled it away. That was his mistake. Aisha launched into her performance.
Musa is hurting me, Mommy!
The mother rushed in from the kitchen, flour dust in her hands. She didn't look at Musa, who was staring at the ceiling in disbelief. She looked only at her precious last-born, Aisha. Musa, you are the eldest. Why are you always making your sister cry? Go to your room, now. But Mama, Musa walked away, shoulders slumped, defeated by a 7-year-old master manipulator. Aisha quickly wiped away her dry tears, grabbed the comic book, and gave her mother the sweetest, most innocent smile. This was the pattern of her life, because she was always protected, always given the last word, and never forced to face a single consequence. Aisha grew up like a magnificent tree with roots that went nowhere. She was beautiful, stylish, and utterly stubborn. By the time she was 20, she didn't just refuse to listen. She refused to believe anyone else could be right. In her mind, the rules that apply to others, like traffic laws, or respecting an elder, or keeping a promise, were simply suggestions she could ignore. She was Aisha, and in the family compound, Aisha was the law. This arrogance was most dangerous when she was behind the wheel of her father's sleek black SUV, speeding through the crowded streets of Abuja. She didn't see any other driver. She saw obstacles. She didn't see pedestrians. She saw slow-moving figures who should just get out of her way. One evening, driving near the Wuse market, Aisha was late for her friend's party. The traffic lights were against her, showing a solid red. The lane beside her had a line of patient waiting cars. As if I have time for this, she muttered, gripping the steering wheel. She swept aggressively into the bus lane, cutting off a minivan and a taxi that both blasted their horns at her. Aisha just waved her hands dismissively, her window still up. Their anger meant nothing to her. She sped through the red light and smirked. Aisha's car flew down the road like a hungry hawk chasing its prey. The city light of Abuja flashed on her face as she sang loudly to her favorite song. Lip gloss glowed and her phone kept buzzing beside her. Ah, it's just Zainab, she said, smiling. She's probably asking where am I. The music was loud, her mood was high, and her pride was even higher. Everyone always said Aisha was spoiled, but she didn't care. In her mind, she was just special. People who told her no were just jealous of her or boring. She pressed her foot harder on her pedal. Suddenly, a big yellow bus swerved in front of her. "Are you mad?" Aisha shouted, slamming her horn. But before she could move again, she heard another horn, this time much closer. A motorcyclist appeared out of nowhere. He tried to stop, but it was too late. The sound echoed in her ears. The car shook. Her heart jumped. The music stopped. Everything went still. For the first time in a long time, Aisha froze. She opened her eyes slowly and saw the man lying on the ground beside his falling bike. People began to gather quickly. Someone shouted, "Driver, you hit him! You no see him!" Aisha's hand shook. Her lips trembled. She stepped out of her car, her heels clicking on the road. It, it wasn't my fault, she said weakly, her voice tiny like a child. But the crowd didn't care. They were angry. See wetin your speed cause. You think say because your papa get money, you fit kill am? Abeg make una call the popo on her. Aisha's chest rose and fell fast. She had never felt like this before. She bent down, checked the injured man, and then turned to Aisha. "Young lady, what's your name?" "Aisha," she whispered. "All right, Aisha," the officer said. "You are coming with us to the station." Aisha blinked. "To where?" "But my dad, my dad is Mr. Lawal. He will—" "I don't care who your dad is," the officer said. "You broke the law. You could have killed this man. You will face it." The words hit Aisha harder than the accident itself. No one had ever spoken to her like that before. At the police station, she sat on a cold wooden bench, her designer bag beside her. The smell of dust and sweat filled the air. She had never been in a place like that. Her phone was taken away. Her hair was messy. Her heart kept racing. She wished Mama would come, rushing in to save her. She wished one of her brothers would storm in shouting, "Leave my sister alone." But nobody came. Hours passed. The officer returned and said, "Your father is on his way." Aisha smiled in relief. Thank God. For once, her fake tears didn't work. The officer spoke again. "Sir, we have decided not to press charges since the man is fine. But your daughter needs discipline. There's a community program for reckless drivers. She will go." "What program?" Aisha asked, her voice rising. Baba turned to her and said firmly, "A farm in Gwagwalada. You will work there for 2 months." Aisha gasped. "A farm, Baba? I can't. That place is full of mud and smell." "Then it will teach you humility," he said. And just like that, the girl who never heard the word no finally did. That night, as she sat in her room packing her clothes, unwittingly, Aisha stared at herself in the mirror. Her proud face looked different. The road to the farm was long and dusty. The sun was hot like fire, and the air smelled of dry grass. Aisha sat at the back of her father's car, frowning, her suitcase laid beside her, filled with fancy clothes that didn't belong anywhere near a farm. "I can't believe this," she muttered, crossing her arms. "A farm? Seriously?" Her father didn't care. He just drove in silence. When they finally reached, Aisha looked out of the window and almost screamed. Chicken ran across the yard, goats bleated. People in old clothes carried baskets of vegetables. There was no Wi-Fi, no AC, no comfort, just dust, noise, and the smell of animal. "Papa, please, I can't stay here," she said, her voice shaking. "You will," the officer replied calmly, "until you learn something more valuable than pride." Her father handed her bag to a tall woman in a wrapper and her scarf. "This is Madame Grace," he said. "She's in charge here. We should be grateful you didn't end up behind bars." Madame Grace smiled, but her eyes were sharp. "Welcome, city princess," she said. "Let's see if you can handle real work." When her father's car drove away, Aisha suddenly felt small. For the first time, no one was there to protect her. Madame Grace showed her to a small room with 2 beds, one already taken. The other bed was covered with a thin faded blanket. Aisha covered her nose. Where's the air conditioner? Madame Grace laughed. The air here is free, my dear. That's your AC. Aisha sat on the bed, angry and uncomfortable. Then the door opened. A tall, strong-looking girl walked in. Her skin glowed under the sun, and her eyes looked bold and fearless. She carried a hole on her shoulder like it weighed nothing. Madame Grace smiled. Aisha, this is Zainab, your roommate. Zainab dropped her hole and looked Aisha up and down. So you are the city girl who thinks work is dirty, she said with a smirk. Aisha raised her chin. Excuse me, I don't think I know work like that. This isn't for me. Morning came too early. Madame Grace's voice echoed through the calm. Wake up, work starts at 6. Aisha groaned and pulled the blanket over her head. It's too early. Zainab yanked the blanket off her. You better get up, princess. Madame Grace doesn't joke. Aisha glared. Don't touch me. Zainab smiled. Then move faster. By the time Aisha finally got outside, everyone was already working. Some were planting yams, others feeding chickens. Madame Grace handed Aisha a small basket. You start by picking vegetable with Zainab. Aisha sieged. Fine, but I'm not touching mud. Zainab grinned. Then you will go hungry. Hours passed. The sun burnt her skin. Her nails got dirty, and sweat poured down her face. She wanted to cry, but she refused to let Zainab see her. See that, Zainab said, pointing at Aisha's tiny pile of vegetables. Even the chickens work faster than you. Mind your business, Aisha snapped. Zainab laughed again. You think your father's money can save you here? Try that fake cry. Maybe the goats will pity you. Everyone nearly laughed. Aisha's face turned red. She wanted to scream, but she had no words. For the first time, someone wasn't afraid of her. That night, she sat alone under the moon, her hands sored and her heart heavy. She looked at Zainab, laughing with the others by the fire, and thought, why does she hate me so much? But deep inside, another thought whispered, or maybe she's the only one brave enough to tell me the truth. Aisha didn't know it yet, but this bold, stubborn girl named Zainab was about to change her life forever. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into a month. At first, Aisha cried every night. She hated the hard work, the early mornings, and the way everyone laughed when she complained. Zainab was the hardest on her. If Aisha dropped her hoe, Zainab would say, the ground won't farm itself, princess. If Aisha refused to work, Zainab would shake her head and say, then you eat air for dinner. But something strange began to happen. Slowly, Aisha stopped crying. She began to wake up early on her own. Her hands, once soft like butter, became stronger. She began to talk less and listen more. One hot afternoon, as they carried baskets of cassava, Aisha stumbled and dropped hers. The cassava rolled everywhere. She waited for Zainab to laugh as usual. But Zainab didn't laugh. She quietly bent down and helped her pick them up. Thanks, Aisha said softly. Zainab smiled. You're learning, that's good. For the first time, Aisha smiled back. From that day, they became friends. They worked together, cooked together, and even shared jokes. Aisha began to enjoy the peace of the farm, the cool air at dawn, the sound of birds, and the laughter of the other workers. After 2 months, her father barely recognized her when he came. His proud, spoiled daughter now looked strong and humble. How was the farm? He asked as he drove back to Abuja. Aisha smiled gently. It was the best punishment I ever got. When she reached home, her brother stared at her in shock. She hugged each of them tightly and said, "I'm sorry for how I treated you." They couldn't believe it. Even her mother wiped a tear from her eyes. From that day, Aisha helped around the house. She listened when people spoke. She stopped shouting and began to show kindness. She even called Zainab often, and they became like sisters. The girl who once refused to listen had finally learned the most important lesson in her life. Respect, patience, and humility makes a person blind. No matter who you are or where you come from, kindness and respect will take you further than pride ever will.